Hi everybody, Randy Wakeman here. This is a shotgun I've never reviewed before. It's the Fabarm Elos D2 with an alloy receiver in 12 gauge. First question is, why would you want this gun or not want it? Well, for starters, the weight. This weighs 6 pounds, 9 ounces. It's like 6 pounds, 8.6 ounces. So roughly a 6.5 pound gun. So this is essentially the same weight as my 26-inch Remington Wingmaster Classic 20 gauge. Very similar weight to a lot of 20 gauges. Some are a little bit lighter, including this D2 in 20 gauge. But if you look at, the Browning Silver, Gold, Winchester SX4, they're 6.5 pound guns. So you're talking about the same weight, but in 12 gauge. Alloy receivered 12 gauges can be a challenge. And the reason is balance. Far too many over and under shotguns have excessively heavy barrels. And that is where the Fabarm shines. Because if you look at the weight, it's perfectly balanced, absolutely perfectly balanced. And that can only happen if you've got lightweight barrels. Anybody can make a heavy barrel, just a thicker wall, but that is a crude way to make a firearm. It's the kiss of death for a lightweight gun, because you want something that's neutrally balanced, easy to shoulder, easy to mount, easy to carry. So, the triggers break around 4 1/4, 4.5 pounds. Tri-bore barrels, as with all Fabarms. While Fabarm doesn't specifically grade their wood, this is it's a very nice oil-finished stick of walnut. Certainly not exhibition grade, but very nice, well-balanced in color and tone. Some distinct mineral streaks. So it's very, very nice. Stippled trigger. So the first question is everybody wants to know, how's the recoil? So let me just shoot at grass and get a feel for it. Obviously I'm not wearing an upland vest or a shooting vest. This is just a thin shirt. And this is with Fiocchi 1 ounce, 1250 foot/second loads. The factory pad is a field pad from Fabarm. You can certainly change the pad if you wish, but like many field pads, it's not particularly thick. It's there for effortless, snag-free mounting, more so than ultimate recoil reduction. Ejection, just fine. So why would you want a gun like this? Well, there is the anything other than 12 gauge tax. You're going to pay more for 20 gauge ammo. You're going to pay much, much more for 28 gauge 410 ammo, the two worst values in shot shells. And it's always been that way, and it's always going to be that way, because 80% of the market is 12 gauge, maybe 15% of ammo sales are 20 gauge, and that last 5% is everything else. So it costs less to feed a 12 gauge than it does a 20 gauge, and much less to feed a 12 gauge than it does anything else. So cost per shot, if you shoot a lot, that's a big deal. These are 1 ounce 1250 loads. Doesn't matter, you can go as light as you want. 1200, 1145, even low recoil loads if that's a factor for you. So, you wonder if it breaks some clay pigeons. So let's see if this Fabarm can break a few clay pigeons. So obviously no problem whatsoever. So this gun will not be for everyone, but I can give you a couple examples where it might be for you. The choice is all yours. If you want the lightest gun possible, if you want to shave half pound or so off of this weight, you need to look at 20 gauge. Right, so this is roughly 6.5 pounds. You can go roughly 5 3/4 with the equivalent Fabarm D2 and 20 gauge. Most 20 gauges that I use run right at 6 1/4 pounds. That seems to be a common weight. The ones that I use, and that's from a B80 to Weatherby 18i and so on. So this would not be an ideal dedicated clays gun. Although, if you use light loads, and probably you'd want to get a more generous pad, you'll have no problem for casual clays, or on the dub field with 1 ounce loads. So, the tang safety on this example is pretty stiff. So if this is my gun, I would ask Fabarm to lighten it. I want a light tang safety, particularly when I've got gloves on, or cold hands, etc., for a field gun. Good purchase, but this one is on the stiff side. It's okay, but I think that could be improved on. That is really my only niggle with this gun. Would be the stiff tang safety, which Fabarm can take care of. It's a good looking gun. Fabarm does a nice job engraving and inking the Ergol 55 alloy, aluminum alloy, which is kind of hard to do. A lot of alloy guns look almost clear, like there's no engraving at all. So it is a very, very attractive gun. So yeah. And there are some people, I should say, that for whatever reason don't think that they can shoot a 20 gauge. I've heard that again and again. It's like, oh, I can't hit anything with a 20 gauge. Well, I don't think that's the reason, but some people are just adverse to anything but 12 gauge. And of course, this has 3-inch chambers. So if you want a versatile gun where you're going to do a lot of walking, but comparatively little shooting for pheasant hunting, a couple shots a day with an upland vest on, your warmer hunting clothes, it's not going to be a problem for you. And it just gives you more versatility. 3-inch 12 gauge, you have all kinds of choices in loads that you don't have in 20 gauge. You know, once you get beyond 1 1/4 ounce, 1 5/16 with a 20 gauge, that is the limit, and those are not particularly fast loads. But with a 12 gauge, obviously you can go anywhere from 3/4 ounce all the way up to 1 7/8 or even heavier if you want, which would be no fun in this gun for sure. But the versatility is there. People have their own ideas about recoil, about felt recoil. I don't think with 1 ounce loads this is going to be much of a problem with anybody. And certainly, if you don't want to buy a second gun, let's say your pheasant hunting is preserve hunting and the like, well, this would be ideal for you. I mean, it's the right weight, and preserve hunting, 1 1/8, really, 1 1/8 of 5s is an excellent pheasant load. And 1 ounce is plenty for, certainly for doves quail, etc., etc. It's hard to get a gun like this right. Fabarm has steel reinforcements in the back of the receiver, which they have added to the 20 gauge. They did that a few years ago. And the improvement on the D2, there's several little minor improvements. The forearm used to have an extra curvy part here that was prone to breakage in the early Elos models, and obviously that's been addressed. So it's a nice gun. Is it your choice? It's a choice. For my purposes, I'll probably stick with 20 gauges, but out in the field, there's always more 12 gauges being used, even on the dove field around here, than anything else. But the big benefit, of course, is ammo cost. You know, it's just like if you, let's say you own a BMW. A lot of people do, and they always complain when they go to the pump, because here in Illinois you're paying an extra $1 a gallon. So any vehicle that's premium only for me, it's a non-starter. I have zero interest. So it's the same way with a 12 gauge. Cheaper to feed, regardless of 12 gauge. But this one, I don't think anybody would have any problem carrying it. I said, you're right at the 6.5 pound level, and that's really even a few ounces lighter than my Fabarm L4S, which is gas operated autoloader, certainly softer shooting. But this is lighter yet. And that is just about it. So that really wraps it up for a quick look at the D2 in 12 gauge. I said if you prefer 12 gauges over 20 gauge or anything else, but you don't want a heavy gun, this would be it. Years ago I had a Browning Satori Grade 2, beautiful gun with fixed chokes, full over modified 26-inch barrels. And I hunted pheasants with it for part of 1 year, but it was an 8-pound gun, and it just gets old dragging 8 pounds out there. So it was Jack O'Connor that said he would never consider a shotgun that weighed any more than 7 pounds for upland hunting. And it's a pretty good guideline, really. Well, this knocks off a ½ pound from that. But recoil is going to be more. If this was my gun, I would probably put on a Pachmayr SC100 pad, which was going to give you more recoil attenuation than this pad. But with an upland vest or a shooting vest, there's going to be a lot less felt recoil than what I'm feeling right now. So, good gun. If you prefer a 12 gauge, but you don't want the weight, this is something you might want to consider. So that's it. Thanks for stopping by.